Archibong, representing the people of Itu, Ibiono Federal Constituency in Akwa Ibom State. Mr. Speaker, I want to support this bill for the simple reason that it is trying to strengthen the National Health Act. Mr. Speaker, I see this amendment as a very microscopic aspect of the National Health Act. The question is, here we are berating doctors that they are not performing well, they cannot diagnose. Here we are saying that our people who walk into the clinic and they don't get treated. It's very, very sad and it's very emotional. But it will also interest us to know that our people, high-profile Nigerians, have also walked into clinics in Europe and come back dead. But the issue, Mr. Speaker, is this: how much of the Health Act is being implemented? If we implement the Health Act, then people will naturally not go out of this country to seek medical treatment abroad. For instance, we are expected to provide 15% of the annual budget to fund health in this country. But so far, we've been having less than 5%. We are also aware that we are supposed to also be deducting 1%, I think, from the Consolidated Revenue Fund to also add to fund health. That has not been done. If that were to have been done, we would have had enough facilities. For instance, somebody brought a motion here sometime that said that we got to discover that it is only one X-ray, one radiotherapy machine that functions in this country. So if you have people that are queuing up for radiotherapy that have cancer and they cannot get access to such facility, what do? They have to move. Mr. Speaker, in implementing the National Health Act, a lot of issues are going to be addressed. Now, let me point out to my colleagues, honorable colleagues in this house. Some days ago, we tried to bring a motion to investigate the accounting procedures in the teaching hospital. Mr. Speaker, I brought that with the simple reason that I have also had an experience after working in the teaching hospital. I want to say that the corruption that is even happening in the teaching hospital is so astronomical that it might even surpass this. For instance, when people come for treatment, say in the hospital, bills are made. Bills are not made by doctors. Bills are made by the accountants. Somebody can be given a bill of say 120,000, and by the time the person goes to pay the bill, Mr. Speaker, this is what happens. They tell you, madam, if you do not, or madam or oga, if you cannot pay 120,000, give us 60,000. We will destroy the folder. Mr. Speaker, I stand here to tell you that that is what happens in the teaching hospital. By the time you don't get to pay your 120,000 naira, for instance, and you're paying only 20,000, and somebody pockets that money, the next time you come for your follow-up treatment, the card has disappeared. So that is also one aspect that has to be corrected, not only that people should be regulated from traveling abroad, even though it is not a good thing to do. But if the National Health Act is implemented, a lot of control, just like he has stated here in his objective. The objective of this amendment, he has listed a lot of them here, Mr. Speaker. The objective of this amendment is the objectives that are found in the National Health Act. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that we have to do the right thing, because what we are suffering in Nigeria today in terms of inability of Nigerians to get good medical treatment in this country is because of our inactions. It is because of the inactions of the leaders. The other day I brought a motion about the presidential villa clinic. It's so sad that even the presidential villa clinic cannot, be able to cater for the president of this country. So, like the First Lady has said, how much more the poor Nigerians? So, Mr. Speaker, I want to support the presenter of this bill, and also to say that probably by the time it passes to second reading, we'll be able to look at the fact that I think in Section 6 of that National Health Act, there's a provision for regulation of this foreign medical treatment abroad. So that can be strengthened. I support Mr. Speaker, the presenter of this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
People of Ibiono Federal Constituency in Akwa Ibom State. I don't know how passionate I spoke, but for me, I supported the bill because the bill seeks to strengthen a part of the National Health Act. But my problem with the bill was that, like I said, that part my colleague wanted to amend is just I called it a very microscopic aspect of the National Health Act, because he was trying to amend the act such that the act will regulate foreign trips by public officers. That's for public officers who are going to seek help or health care outside the country, because he looked at the fact that so much capital flight takes place when you move out of the country. For example, he was mentioning something in the region of $500 million annually, and that's a very huge sum of money. And so his argument was that if we can plow that money back into the system, it will help to strengthen the health system. But my problem is that that aspect is just a very small aspect of it, because I looked at the fact that the whole National Health Act has even not been implemented, in a way that should bring the good aspect of health into the country. For instance, we are talking of 15%. Every country should provide not less than 15% of the annual budget to fund healthcare. Nigeria has never ever gone above 6%. Now, so many other countries, Ghana, a lot of African countries, I don't want to talk of European countries, have gone beyond that. But Nigeria is still not able to meet up the WHO standard. Now, even the Health Act also stipulates that 1% of the 1% should be deducted from the Consolidated Revenue Fund, also to help to fund healthcare. That has not been done. So when you do not give people effective healthcare delivery, how then can you now stop them from going outside to take treatment? But the issue is that if you're going outside to take treatment, it shouldn't be with public fund. But the other issue is that most people that go out of the country to seek healthcare do not actually take permission that they are going. They just travel, and then on getting there, they take care of themselves and all that. And then the bulk of people that even go are even private people. And then I asked a question. I said, sometime last year, somebody brought a motion. It had to do with cancer, and there was a lot of discussion, and somebody got to mention that in this country we had only one functional radiotherapy machine. And if you have people that are coming in for radiotherapy, those that probably have cancer that is amenable to radiotherapy, and they have to queue up, if by the time it gets to their turn, there is no chance for them, they have to go outside and take medical treatment. Now the other issue is, even those that go to India, because India seems to have the highest chunk of medical tourism as far as Nigeria is concerned, even in India, they all go to private concerns, private medical facilities, not even the government facilities. So you find that we spend so much. So in as much as that amendment is to strengthen the National Health Act, I was in support of it. Now the other issue is, some weeks back, I also brought a motion. The motion was to investigate the tertiary institutions. We wanted to look at the accounting procedure. The reason was that, unknown to my colleagues, that motion was killed. Unknown to my colleagues, the amount of corruption that goes on in the tertiary health facility is so much. For instance, I gave an example. I said, if somebody is sick and is taking treatment in the teaching hospital, Federal Medical Center, because I am a medical doctor, and I remember when I was a house officer, so I know what used to go on. Some people are treated. And then by the time you go to pay your bill, if your bill is, say, 120,000, and you don't have the money, trust Nigerians. They will tell you, well, madam, or oga, see, out of that 120, what can you give to us? And the person says, well, I can pay 60. They will collect the 60. Now, when they collect the 60, what happens to the folder? The folder gets missing. By the time the person comes back for follow-up, because he or she is not likely to know that the folder was missing, because they wouldn't tell you. So by the time you come back, your folder is no more there, and you begin to open a new folder, and that money is gone. And that's one aspect of revenue leakages as far as the tertiary institutions are concerned. Now I give another example. If you go to donate blood, if you're doing surgery, I don't know whether it has changed now. If you're doing surgery or your wife wants to deliver, they probably will ask you to donate blood, 2 pints of blood. Now, for anybody that wants to do a cesarean section or myomectomy, which is like removal of fibroid, you need at least a minimum of 2 pints of blood, and that blood the house officer must touch it. Now, when you get to the operation, it does not mean that the blood must be used. Now, the doctor can be so careful that, because the truth is that if you can avoid blood, you avoid it. Now, a lot of those blood are not used. So when they are not used, they are kept. The person that donated the blood, you that bought the blood, you're not going to get your money refunded to you. These are practical issues. Now, that blood is going to be sold to another person, but that money is not going to go into the coffers of the teaching hospital or the Federal Medical Center. There are issues where staffs in the lab, in the hematology section, anywhere, they print their own receipts and keep. So when you get there, they write their own receipts. Some teaching hospitals or some health facilities try to see how they can regulate this, but it's very difficult. You go to the mortuary, people die every day in the mortuary. The mortuary attendant decides how much you pay and decides how much goes in. So if you look at the fact that so much money is generated in the tertiary health facilities, and a little of it is coming back into the government, you can imagine the revenue leakage. So when you look at regulating only the foreign trips, what about regulating the corruption in the system? And then we're also looking at the fact that a lot of medical equipment that are bought into the country because of corruption, a lot of them are simply refurbished. Or what they do is that they buy it and come in. So long as it has passed through inspection and whoever says is okay, in the next 2-3 weeks, it doesn't work again. But if you go to the private medical practice, you see that scan machines, whatever machines that they bought is still functioning. But once it is that has to do with the public, they will always go to pick up a substandard one. So when you're talking of regulating foreign trips, what happens to the fact that the equipment that are bought are not sustainable? And then we looked at the fact that even the presidential clinic, if you remember, I also was the one that moved a motion concerning the fact that the presidential clinic is an embarrassment, based on the fact that the president's wife even cried out. So if the president of this country could not even take care of his own clinic, so I can imagine what happens to the poor people like us, just like the First Lady had said. So it's a very huge embarrassment and it's a very huge loss for us. So my grouse is that let the National Health Act be implemented. If you fund the budget by 15% and then you plug all the revenue leakages in the tertiary institutions, in fact, for me, a teaching hospital that is operating very, very optimally can supply as much money to fund the healthcare. So if you can block those leakages plus that comes, then you find out that you can have the facilities for doctors to work. So, but my problem is that most of the lawmakers or the executive arm of government, they always deride the medical doctors in Nigeria. And I tell them that the medical doctors in Nigeria are the best. And I've told them on the floor of the house before that I have done cesarean sections with candlelight. Yes, I have done it with candlelight. But then that's not the ideal thing to do. But then because there was no power, so will the person die? Because if you have to move the person 2 hours away from that place, the person probably is going to bleed and die. For somebody that probably had a ruptured uterus. So the Nigerian doctors are doing well. The only thing they need is the enabling environment. And like my colleagues were very, very sentimental. This one said my dad walked into the hospital, my mom couldn't afford treatment. And I say, well, it's pathetic. You know, it's something that it shouldn't be allowed. But the issue is that very high profile Nigerians in this country have had their wives or their husbands walk to the clinics abroad and came back dead. I'm sure you remember that our former vice president was taken out of this country and came back dead. You know, but if it was in Nigeria the man died, they probably would say the doctors did not do whatever they were supposed to do. I remember the wife of one president that went out and came back dead, and nobody was killed because the person died in Europe. You know, so the doctors in Nigeria are trying. All we need to do, all the doctors need to do, or all they need to do for the doctors is to give them the enabling environment to work. And the enabling environment can only be done by implementing the National Health Act.
All right, sir. Do you agree with what?
If you want to talk of the constitutional aspect of it, the truth is that the Constitution allows us freedom of movement, freedom of expression. But the issue is that, remember, where your freedom stops is where another person's freedom begins. Now the issue is that whose fund are you using? If you want to use your money, there is no problem. Nobody will stop you because it's your money, but not the federal government's money. So that's why I say in that act, there's a section of that act that allows the minister to regulate such, you know, healthcare service outside of the country. So I do not totally agree with the person. You understand me?
All right. Another one is this. I heard when the debate was going on, they were insisting that medical doctors in this Nigeria are not serious, and that most of them have their own private.
Because the truth is that if a doctor does not have facilities to work, it could be very frustrating. When I said I did cesarean section with candlelight and torchlight, it's not that it was a palatable experience. Because when you do when you are doing a surgery in a hot room, you can imagine how much sweat. It's so stressful. But the issue is that if a doctor, if the federal government cannot provide facilities for you to operate, and you can provide your own facilities to operate, there's nothing wrong. The only thing wrong is that the Nigerian law does not allow you to work in the teaching in the federal establishment and also operate your own private business. But if you're operating your own private business and you're not working in the government hospital, there's nothing wrong with that.